We are living in a strange world. And I'm not just talking about COVID. Life in general is so different from what I remember growing up. Or maybe that's just the reality of being an adult in 2020. Technology is at the forefront of our lives. There's an obsession around productivity that I myself have bought into. And relationships are being built on a foundation of superficiality. It's only in the past few years that I myself have really been trying to put in an effort into creating deeper and meaningful relationships with those around me. And I'm not gonna lie, it's taken a lot of self-growth for me to get to this point where I am right now. Why am I bringing this up right now? Because this pandemic has amplified a lot of these feelings for me. During times like this, it's really easy to lose sight of how to self-care when you don't care anymore. For me, that doesn't mean I don't care about life or living, but it's that motivation, that drive, that desire that used to come so naturally to me. But this may look different for you, and I really believe there is a different level of not caring, depending on what someone is going through. With that in mind, I wanted to talk about how to cope with the world, whichever world it is that you're living in right now, whichever bubble you may be immersed in. For me, this begins with the basics. Behaviors that help reset my mind and body, reminders that I've needed while physical distancing, but also ones that I know I can refer back to during other times, especially when life gets busy again. In no particular order, these are 10 habits for success that have helped me during the past few weeks and hopefully will help some of you as well. Number 1, set your alarm an hour later. Usually I'm an early riser, and I thought this would be no different. I don't have the commitments to keep me up at night, and I can go to bed early, meaning I can get up early as well. I was setting my alarm clock for about 6:30 a.m., which is about an hour later than what I normally get up when I am going to school, going to work, that sort of thing. Easy peasy. But this was the problem. Not only was I not getting up at 6:30, I was snoozing for probably an hour before I actually got out of bed. When I finally got up, I felt unmotivated and dejected because I couldn't do something as easy as getting up at a reasonable time. And on top of that, I would feel more tired because the last part of my sleep wasn't even restful with all of that snoozing. I really didn't take into account what I needed at that time. I wasn't listening to my body when I was going to bed later, watching all of those movies and the Netflix marathons. And I also wasn't taking into account that maybe I just needed more rest. There's a lot going on in the world right now. And another thing I quickly realized is that it's actually quite difficult to get up early in the morning when you don't have those commitments and that routine during your day. So inherently, this quickly turned into the complete opposite of self-care. The solution? Set my alarm for an hour later. I ended up being more productive during the day because I was more rested. I wasn't hitting that snooze button over and over again. And psychologically, the benefit of waking up when my alarm goes off was actually quite beneficial as well. Number 2, get ready. I really believe that getting through self-care when you don't care is really difficult without talking about the morning routine. And I've really learned during this time how difficult those seemingly easy tasks can really be. We talk about this often when discussing mental illness and depression, but those small behaviors can really feel insurmountable when the right, or should I say, wrong circumstances arise. The biggest help for me was waking up in the morning, brushing my teeth right away, and getting changed. And at first, this would just be getting changed out of my pajamas, but I do think it's helpful to get changed into something that you would be comfortable going out of the house in. You can still be comfortable, but get out of those pajamas and sweats if you can. And before you judge me, I really don't know why it's so easy to get out of my bed, go downstairs, start my day, only to realize at about 3 p.m. or later in the afternoon that I haven't even brushed my teeth yet. But let's be real here, don't tell me this has never happened to you either. My solution is to get to the bathroom, brush my teeth as soon as I get out of bed in the morning, no matter how many days it's actually been since I've left the house. Actually, scratch that. Let's talk about that a little bit later. Number 3, routine. One thing that has helped in terms of how to self-care and maintain my mental health in quarantine is to create a routine, especially since mine was thrown out completely a few weeks ago. The issue I've had though is finding ways to fill my routine. Waking up, watching TV, well, I mean, waking up, brushing my teeth, and then watching TV is hardly a routine. So to put some things together, I've added in making my bed, making coffee, tidying up around the house before I actually get my day started. And this gives me a few things to do to fill up that little bit of a routine in the mornings. And I've also done a similar thing in the evenings in terms of routine. So I'll start to wind down, make some tea, maybe read a book, and then do all of my showering in that business. I'm definitely a night showerer as opposed to those, I don't know who they are, but those weird morning showers out there. Even though my morning routine is quite brief, as you now know, I do believe it's important to have some sort of routine to get started in the mornings. And I do think that it's also important in terms of getting towards better self-care. Number 4, minimize your to-do list. I feel like a part of my tools to help cope with the world are mainly focused around me making myself feel better. On this theme, let's get to habit number 4. Minimize your to-do list. I can't count the number of times that I've made a to-do list that is just unrealistic. This is quite self-explanatory, but it's really important to not set yourself up for failure. I'm creating a 3-item to-do list right now, and this is how I'm doing it to allow for maximum flexibility. In the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, which I read recently, the author spoke about creating week lists instead of daily lists. So throw everything that you have to do into a week list, and then separate that list day by day based on urgency and importance. This way, instead of staring at a 7-item to-do list for Monday morning, I know that maybe reading that chapter from my ECG textbook doesn't really have to be done on Monday. That can be done on Wednesday, and then I'll slot that in for Wednesday. And by keeping my to-do list short, which I am aiming for about 3 items right now per day maximum, I find that I'm able to get through it. And again, the psychology of crossing all of my things off of my to-do list does help in this situation as well. And if I finish all of those 3 items on my list, I can either take something from the next day and do that if I have time or feel like it, or I don't have to. I can go for a run, I can watch a movie, or best of all, I can do nothing. Number 5, 1 active task per day. The first thing I had thought of when these shutdowns happened was that I have so much time on my hands, and that meant focusing on my physical health again. So very quickly, I threw resistance training, yoga, running, all into my so-called schedule. I guess I don't have to tell you how overwhelming that was. My new rule is 1 active exercise per day. If I go for a run, then I'm not doing yoga that day. If I do resistance training, then I won't go for a walk either. And maybe for you, you are able to do those things. Maybe you can go mountain biking in the morning and then go for a run in the evening, which is all great, but for me, I wasn't able to do that. And I thought I would slow it down a little bit on the physical standpoint of things. Number 6, get outside. This may be one of the most underrated habits if you want to self-care when you don't care. And I know it's much easier said than done, but that's why you can do this in any way that fits your life. If you can't exercise outside, go out for a walk. If you can't get outside in those ways, maybe sit on your balcony. Open your front door for 10 seconds. Just get exposed to the outside air. And if that's not possible, let's say you live in an apartment, for instance, just open your windows. Getting outside, in my mind, actually has a really low barrier if you keep your mind open in terms of what getting outside actually means. To me, it's exposing myself to the outdoors, but more importantly, it's getting that fresh air in any way that you can. So don't be so hard on yourself, but at least open your windows. It's a good alternative to the sometimes very difficult task of actually getting outside your house. Number 7, connect with people. It seems as though connecting with people isn't really a reminder that people need during COVID. It's something that a lot of people are making the effort to do right now. But for those who do need the reminder, don't forget to check in on maybe your friends who you haven't spoken to in a while, your parents who you maybe don't live with, or that neighbor of yours who may be elderly and is living alone. Happy birthday ਕਹਿਣਾ ਸੀ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕਿੰਨੇ ਸਾਲ ਦੇ ਹਨ
75 ਪ੍ਰਭੂ ਜੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਦੂਰ ਆ ਤਾਂ ਅਸੀਂ ਯਾਦ ਤਾਂ ਕਰਦੇ ਆ
I know. And we're lucky right now that technology has made communication so accessible. No more long distance calling cards. Everything is in the palm of your hand, literally. A couple years ago, I came across the notion of how social interactions are related to our physical health, and how physicians should actually be incorporating social well-being into their model of health. The idea here is that loneliness is actually a really big public health issue.
So when we feel socially isolated, then the nervous system goes into threat. It goes into the sympathetic nervous system, or what Walter Cannon at Harvard called the stress response. You may know it as the fight or flight response.
I started this off by speaking about my view of superficial relationships, and it relates directly to this point. Although COVID has helped to highlight it, those human interactions are just so important. Whether it's with your siblings, your parents, your friends, maybe your spouse, whatever it is, those relationships are important. But in my opinion, in order for those to be really valuable, those relationships and those interactions have to be meaningful. They have to be real. If you're looking to self-care when you don't care, I would say one of the first steps is reaching out to those around you. When I used to work at a crisis line, I can't count the number of people who used to call in to tell us that they got a new job. Maybe they were laid off of one, or that they were having trouble supporting someone else who was going through a difficult time. So that person can be a stranger. The key here is that you need to be open, you need to be vulnerable, and you need to be you. Number 8, compress your activities. I found that doing yoga every day for an hour, or running for 10 kilometers a day, and I mean in theory, I'm not actually up to 10 kilometers yet, it was just putting me on the fast track to boredom, to losing interest, and to not maintaining any habits that I wanted to. Along with limiting myself to one active task per day, as I mentioned previously, I also decided to compress the allotted time that I would give myself for activities. 20 minutes of yoga or 10 minutes of meditation, for instance, was way less daunting than an hour of any of those activities. And honestly, what is the benefit of the length of time you do something versus the benefits that you get from it? I'm not so sure. Obviously, from a physical standpoint, I may not become as flexible if I'm only doing yoga for 20 minutes a day, for instance. But there are so many more benefits than the direct physical rewards, which I believe actually indirectly affect our physical being and health anyways. It's always a trade-off. My way of coping with the world is to focus in on myself in whichever way I need it for however long I need it. Number 9, allocate time wisely. Allocating time when I'm the most productive is really important when I don't have a routine. And I'm the most productive in the mornings, so that's where I always throw my brain tasks. Reading, journaling, meditating, working on videos, those are things that I normally leave until the afternoon, times when I'm less likely to be learning or studying. And for me, I find that that works better in terms of the way that I live my life. Number 10, seek help. Last but not least, don't be afraid to ask for help. This may be from a family member, a friend, or even a health professional. There's a reason why I led with tips to help cope with the world, or habits for self-care when you don't care. This is a tough time for everyone, and I don't want to minimize what any one of you are going through by saying that if you get outside for 5 minutes, it's going to solve all of your problems, because that's just not the reality. Similarly, going out for a run won't take you out of the trenches of depression if that's what you're faced with right now. Get those telehealth appointments, talk to your doctor, or seek out other professional help if that's what you need right now. And going along with the theme of this video, the acute situation that you're dealing with right now may have just been exacerbated by what's going on in the world from a macro point of view. If you're struggling, that doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with you. In my opinion, it just means that you're human. Finally, as you may be able to tell, a lot of these habits help me to feel more productive. And I touched on this obsession with productivity at the beginning of this video, and I am in the productivity camp, but I believe there's a big misconception about what productivity is and what it means. For me, it doesn't mean finishing 10 tasks every day, or crossing off your entire to-do list, or even studying for 8 hours straight. Productivity is a big source of self-care for me, because it shows me that I'm able to accomplish tasks throughout my day. That may be as simple as making my bed in the morning, brushing my teeth, or studying for an hour before I get my day started. I really believe that productivity is more of a mindset versus how much you get done during the day, which is why I like to fill my day up with tasks and behaviors that are realistic and doable. In that way, I ensure that my habits for success are, in fact, setting me up for success. Well, I hope you found at least some of that useful. If anything, it's a glimpse into how I cope with the world and focus in on my self-care when it's sometimes difficult to. Don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed it, and feel free to subscribe to my channel if you'd like to follow the rest of my journey. As always, I will see you in the next one.